Half an hour earlier, just as Hanli had barely broken through to the 4th level of the spirit refinement art, something else was happening far away. Countless tens of thousands of miles from the abyss where Hanli stood, a towering white mountain rose straight into the clouds. From the middle of the mountain onward, thick white spirit clouds drifted all around it, while the summit pierced above the sea of clouds. At the very top stood a vast green stone platform built entirely from bluish-green rock. At its center was a square stone table, with 4 stone chairs arranged around it. Though their designs were identical, each chair was a different color. At that moment 3 of those chairs were occupied. One of them held a young man in a black robe. His skin was dark, his eyes narrow, and 2 silver-white horns jutted from his forehead, giving him a cold and fearsome air. Another was a white-robed man with a tall, elegant figure, seemingly in his 30s or 40s. His features were breathtakingly handsome, and his flowing white hair danced in the wind, with a single dazzling strand of gold woven through it, making him appear even more extraordinary. The last was an old man with red hair and a red beard. He was bent and hunched, leaning on a crimson cane, looking every bit like a frail elder nearing the end of his years. Above the stone table floated a white water mirror. Inside it, white radiance churned and rolled like a furious dragon twisting through the air, shining with crystalline brilliance that seemed to surge toward the heavens. Even through the mirror, its astonishing aura could still be felt. Beneath the white radiance, a deep and shadowy gorge could vaguely be seen, with strands of black mist drifting out from within. This phenomenon is no small matter. The fluctuations actually reached all the way here. That powerful spiritual sense ripple. Could it be that someone in Old Valley God's territory has broken through to the great Luo realm? The black-robed youth said slowly. If someone had truly broken through to Great Luo, the celestial signs would never be this minor. To me, this looks more like someone completing the cultivation of some kind of soul-secret art. The white-robed man replied calmly, shaking his head. The black-robed youth frowned slightly, glanced at the white-robed man, and let out a cold snort. "Brother Yu, what do you think?" the white-robed man asked, unbothered, as he turned toward the red-haired elder. "This is indeed rather strange. But since that place lies within fellow Taoist Gu's sphere of influence, we should not interfere under our agreement," the red-haired elder said, stroking his beard without giving a firm opinion. "Today is the day the 4 of us gather once every million years, yet fellow Taoist Gu has already missed several meetings in a row. Now such a strange occurrence has appeared in his territory as well. One really has to wonder what exactly he intends," the white-robed man said with a helpless smile. "Fellow Taoist Gu has always been mysterious. There is no need to dwell on it," the red-haired elder said with a chuckle. "So even Brother Lu wants to concern himself with Old Valley God's affairs. You really do meddle widely. A few days ago, one of your branches suddenly struck in the Dark Star Mountain range and seized an entire insect territory there. How do you explain that?" the black-robed youth said coldly. "So that is why Brother Zhua has been targeting Lu today." The white-robed man smiled, utterly unconcerned. "You and I have descendants in the thousands upon thousands, scattered across this vast wilderness for hundreds of millions of miles. They live or die on their own. That is simply survival of the fittest. Why concern ourselves with it? If Brother Zhua is truly unwilling to let it go, then send your people to take it back. In that case, everything that needed to be said today has already been said. I'll be taking my leave first." The black-robed youth rose abruptly. His figure blurred, then vanished into the void, though his voice still echoed in the air. Brother Zhua's temper is still as fierce as ever. "Brother Lu, then I too shall take my leave. Until we meet again in another million years." The red-haired elder also stood and swept his cane through the empty air. A white line appeared in the space above the platform, then slowly opened to either side, revealing a spatial passage. The red-haired elder stepped into it with perfect composure, and the rift immediately sealed shut behind him. This boy does have some nerve. Instead of moving forward or retreating, he chose to stay in place and cultivate. Very well. Let me see just how capable this human elder brother recognized by Lure truly is. A faint smile appeared on the white-robed man's lips. He then raised a hand. With a sharp crack, the white water mirror shattered into countless glittering fragments of light that fell like rain. Amid the flashing crystals, the white-robed man's figure also vanished from the mountaintop. Han Li's contemplation lasted more than 10 full days. His divine sense had always far surpassed that of golden immortals of the same rank. Now that the 4th level of the spirit refinement art had reached completion, his divine sense had grown even stronger, naturally meeting the requirement for cultivating the 5th level. As for his body, there was no problem there either. But the 5th level of the technique was exceedingly obscure. There were even several parts that seemed dangerously reckless, leaving him at a loss for how to begin. Still, thinking back to how the baleful environment had stimulated his divine sense before, Han Li came up with a similar unconventional method. If he could find a soul-seizing wind even stronger than before to aid him, it might be possible to continue improving his divine sense. With that thought, he put away the jade slip, rose to his feet, and continued flying downward. But after descending for only a short while, Han Li's brows drew together. The farther down he went, the tighter his frown became. To his surprise, the wind below did not grow stronger. Instead, it gradually weakened. The baleful aura became denser and denser, but without that soul-seizing wind, the illusions in his mind could no longer appear. Disappointment flashed across Han Li's face. After pausing for a moment, he returned to the place above where the wind was strongest, sat down cross-legged, and resigned himself to cultivating the 5th level of the spirit refinement art by ordinary means. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye. When Han Li opened his eyes again, frustration showed plainly on his face. During those 6 months, he had cultivated without rest, yet his progress was painfully slow. Not only could it not compare to the rapid advancement he had experienced while using the baleful illusions to cultivate, it was even far inferior to his earlier progress when cultivating the 4th level of the spirit refinement art. Han Li took a deep breath and quickly calmed himself. This kind of slow progress had happened before while cultivating the first 3 levels. In the end, with enough time and constant experimentation, he had still managed to master them step by step. But under the present circumstances, time was short. Continuing like this was clearly no longer a wise choice. After a moment of thought, Han Li formed a hand seal with one hand. His body trembled slightly, and the dense baleful aura around him immediately surged toward him from all directions, swallowing him in an instant. A thunderous roar rang in his ears, as though countless demonic beasts were crying out in their final agony. At the same time, waves of cold and vicious force seeped into his body from every direction. Han Li inhaled deeply and made no effort to resist. The thick baleful aura rampaged wildly through his body. Wherever it passed, his flesh and meridians went numb with stabbing pain, as though countless tiny blades were cutting and stirring inside him. His brows furrowed, then gradually relaxed. He took out a pill meant to improve cultivation, swallowed it, and slowly began to circulate the profound fiend nether spirit art. A rushing sound echoed. The baleful aura stored within Han Li's body erupted all at once. A thick black radiance like dense mist appeared around him, constantly flowing and shifting in a sight that inspired dread. That black radiance merged at once with the surrounding baleful aura, causing the nearby fiendish energy to surge violently. Faint whirlpools formed around his body, and the speed at which the aura poured into him increased sharply. Now he was completely submerged in black baleful energy, as though cloaked in a heavy mantle of dark mist. A prickling sensation soon spread across his skin. As the profound fiend nether spirit art continued operating, the streams of baleful aura inside his body immediately stopped rampaging at random, and instead converged toward a single point, forming a vast torrent. Han Li let out a muffled groan. His brows knotted instantly, and his face turned ugly. Before, the baleful aura had been scattered. Though it caused pain, the discomfort had not been too severe. Now that all of it had gathered in one place, the pain naturally stacked together and multiplied many times over. Fortunately, aside from that nearly unbearable agony, nothing else seemed wrong for the moment. As long as he endured it, he could still use the baleful aura to strike at his 60-second acupoint. In truth, Han Li knew very well that this was not baleful aura he had accumulated himself. It belonged to an outside source, and his body would instinctively reject it. Compared to the baleful aura he had cultivated on his own, this foreign force would only be fiercer and far more unruly. The cold malice contained within it would also continue assaulting his sea of consciousness without restraint. It would not hesitate in the slightest to shatter his acupoints completely or tear his sea of consciousness apart. But time was running out, and Hanli could no longer afford to care about that. He intended to use the savage force of this foreign baleful aura to blast open his immortal acupoints as quickly as possible. Still not enough. Still not enough, Hanli said through clenched teeth, every word forced out one by one as his brows remained tightly drawn. His hand seals changed rapidly. Dark light blazed from his body, and the rate at which the baleful aura poured into him instantly doubled. The pain inside him doubled at the same time. Hanli's heart sank. He barely suppressed the knife-like torment and continued madly drawing the baleful aura into himself, wave after wave, hurling it against his immortal acupoints. The upper part of the abyss howled violently. The fiendish energy churned in a berserk vortex, and the chaotic airflow swept countless beast skeletons from the cliff walls on both sides. They shattered in midair, turning into drifting bone dust and pale ghostly flames. As time passed little by little, the fiendish energy gathered around the area began to thin out. By contrast, the baleful aura around Hanli grew denser and more solid. 3 more months passed in a blur. On that day, a long howl echoed from within the abyss. More than 1,000 li below, Hanli hovered in midair. Beneath one of his shoulder blades, a small whirlpool appeared and frantically drew in the world's origin energy plunging down from above the abyss. It streamed into that whirlpool in great waves and only stopped after more than a dozen breaths. When the golden phenomenon disappeared, a golden point of light remained there. It was the 60-second immortal acupoint. Hanli focused his thoughts on that acupoint. Inside, aside from the large amount of immortal spiritual power that had gathered there, the strand of black baleful aura floating within was much more obvious than before. In the end, it truly was different from those immortal acupoints connected to his own native baleful aura. Hanli shook his head and suppressed the unease in his heart. With a slight wave of his hand, he summoned the mantra treasured wheel before him. After examining it, he discovered that 2 more clusters of time law markings had appeared on it, and only then did he feel somewhat relieved. He slowly exhaled a turbid breath and turned his gaze toward the pitch-black abyss below. Because Hanli had almost completely absorbed the fiendish energy in the upper reaches, the baleful aura below was now rising upward much faster than before. Yet even when he looked down, the abyss was still bottomless, and there was no telling just how deep it truly went. After some thought, Hanli took out a pill, swallowed it, closed his eyes to regulate his breathing for a while, then suddenly opened them again. In the next instant he shot downward once more, vanishing into the roiling fiendish energy below. Just as he expected, the deeper he went, the denser and heavier the baleful aura became. After descending only another 50 or 60 li, Hanli already felt that the wind and fiendish aura rushing at him were several times stronger than where he had been staying before. Illusions of corpse mountains, seas of blood, and savage beasts began appearing again. Only now that the 4th level of the spirit refinement art had fully matured, his tolerance for such illusions had greatly improved. He did not stop. He continued pressing downward against the fiendish wind. Another 30 li later, the surrounding wind weakened slightly again, but the condensed baleful aura around him became much thicker. Hanli felt as though he were pushing through piled snow, finding it difficult to move even an inch. Then without warning a sudden change occurred. Specks of green light appeared in the empty air before him and quickly gathered together. In no time the green giant rat illusion from before emerged once again, now several times larger than before. Its entire body looked as though boiling oil had been poured over it. Its flesh was scorched and rotting everywhere, and all the fur had been burned off its cheeks. Its 2 enormous eyeballs hung loosely inside bloodied sockets, swaying as though they might fall out at any moment. With a shrill screech, the giant rat lunged straight at Hanli. Along with it came an indescribable smell of blood. The moment Hanli caught it, he felt as if a 1,000-foot wave of blood were crashing down before him, ready to swallow him whole. Yet Hanli had already been prepared. He was not shaken in the slightest. Silently reciting the incantation of the spirit refinement art, he let out a sharp shout like a peal of thunder. A powerful force of divine sense instantly swept through his sea of consciousness like a summer storm, cleansing his mind at once. The giant rat illusion that had charged right up to him shattered with a loud crash and vanished. Hanli merely steadied himself for a moment before continuing downward. He knew very well that the denser and purer the baleful aura he absorbed, the greater the help it would give in breaking through his immortal acupoints, and the faster his cultivation would rise. The less time he had left, the more urgently he had to strengthen himself. Every bit of power he gained meant a slightly greater chance of surviving. But after descending only a few hundred more zhang, he had no choice but to stop again. This time what blocked his way was not an illusion, but baleful aura so dense it had reached the absolute limit. The fiendish energy gathered below him had almost lost its mist-like form entirely. It no longer moved at all and looked instead like a black wall cast from solid ink. Hanli could clearly sense that the baleful aura within that wall was different from the aura swirling around him, though he could not say exactly how. After hesitating for a moment, he still bent down and tried reaching one hand into the wall. The moment his hand entered it, a piercing bone-deep cold pain shot through his wrist and palm. Threads of wildly violent baleful aura moved like living things, condensing into sharp spikes and drilling into his skin on their own. Hanli's body shuddered violently. He immediately tried to pull his hand back out of the wall, but a force just as strong wrapped itself around his hand and would not let him withdraw it. A faint blue light glowed in his eyes. Only then did he see clearly that the things clutching his arm were precisely those dense strands of baleful aura that had pierced his hand like needles. Twisted together, they had almost completely wrapped around his palm. Hanli's gaze sharpened. With a crack, golden lightning burst from his palm. The black threads formed from baleful aura recoiled at once when struck by the evil-expelling divine thunder, retreating from his palm and wrist, though they still lingered around him and refused to fully withdraw. Taking advantage of that instant, Hanli yanked his hand free. With one glance at it, he could not help sucking in a cold breath. His palm was covered in a dense field of tiny red dots, each one a hair-thin hole. The baleful aura had already pierced straight through his flesh, and faint black strands still curled within them. With another crackling sound, golden lightning flashed across the surface of his hand once more and vanished. The baleful threads inside those tiny holes disappeared, and the wounds rapidly sealed shut until no trace remained. Hanli let out a light breath and gave a bitter laugh to himself. Fortunately, he had withdrawn in time. If he had been any slower, that hand would probably have been ruined beyond saving. As expected, the deeper one goes, the more aggressive this baleful aura becomes. When the time comes, I'm afraid I won't even need to guide it. It will force its way into my body on its own. And at that point, trying to control it well enough to strike my acupoints certainly won't be so easy, Hanli murmured, his eyes flickering as he pondered. He looked at the black mist wall beneath him, hesitation flashing across his face. There was no doubt that once the baleful aura inside that wall entered his body, it would be like a raging storm. The risk was enormous, and the slightest mistake could end in body and soul being destroyed. But if he could control it, the efficiency of opening his acupoints would undoubtedly multiply several times over. A moment later, a faint light flashed in Hanli's eyes as he made up his mind. Since he had already wagered these 20 years, then what was one more stake on the table? For someone in his current position, there were not many choices left. His thoughts stirred. His figure blurred, and he plunged straight into the black wall. The instant he entered it, Hanli felt his sea of consciousness sink, as though an enormous mountain had been dropped on top of it. Sharp buzzing rang endlessly through his mind, and all 5 of his senses seemed almost sealed off, leaving him barely aware of the changes around him. Outside his body, the ink-like baleful aura wrapped around him, transforming into countless razor-sharp strands that pierced through his skin all over, sinking deep enough to reach the bone. Pain struck his sea of consciousness and his body at the same time. It felt as though an entire mountain of suffering had crashed down directly on him. His whole body trembled violently, and even his divine sense began to scatter. He forcibly drew in a breath, clenched his teeth, and with the very last trace of clarity in his divine sense, activated the spirit refinement art. Now that the 4th level had reached full completion, its power was naturally no longer what it had once been. Hanli instantly felt as if a hurricane had swept through his mind. The shrill ringing in his sea of consciousness disappeared, and his divine sense immediately returned to normal. The moment his divine sense recovered, He used it to guard his mind, then activated the profound fiend nether spirit art, guiding the massive baleful aura flooding into him toward his 63rd acupoint. But the instant he tried, Han Li's expression changed drastically. To his shock, after being drawn by the fiendish cultivation art, only part of the surging baleful aura moved toward that acupoint. The rest still rampaged through his body like wild horses with broken reins, smashing into everything in their path. Crackling sounds burst out across Han Li's entire body like beans exploding in hot oil. Large lumps swelled up across his skin. His body began changing as well. Before the naked eye, he rapidly expanded and grew larger, looking as though he were about to be torn apart by the baleful aura swelling inside him. Han Li was alarmed, but he did not lose control. His hand seals changed again and again as he tried to restrain the fiendish energy flooding in from outside. Yet his body now felt like a breached dam. He simply could not stop the torrent of baleful aura from pouring in. Just as his skin swelled like a balloon from the fiendish energy filling it, as though it were on the verge of bursting, a small whirlpool suddenly appeared at his shoulder and drew another part of the baleful aura into itself. That whirlpool was in fact another one of Han Li's immortal acupoints. Because the baleful aura had become too excessive, it had opened at the same time, joining the 63rd acupoint in receiving the impact. Han Li clenched his teeth and endured the violent pain spreading through his whole body. His mind stretched to the limit as he pushed the profound fiend nether spirit art with all his strength, directing the baleful aura rushing into his body to strike those two acupoints over and over again. Time in the abyss passed unnoticed. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 years had gone by. Near the mouth of the abyss, on a stretch of cliff wall, Jin Tong sat cross-legged on the ground with her hands gathered before her, actually meditating in cultivation. Not far from her, the white jade Pishio rested with its chin on its forepaws, lying flat on the ground with drooping eyelids, as if it had nearly fallen asleep. At that moment the wind stirred, and a streak of golden light flew in from above and landed on the cliff. The white jade Pishio lifted its eyes lazily. Seeing that it was Dahua Xie returning after checking the formation, it drooped its eyelids again. Jin Tong, meanwhile, had not opened her eyes even once. Then from deep below the abyss, a rumbling sound suddenly rose, as though a god of thunder were beating drums. Immediately afterward, rolling baleful aura drifted up from the depths like morning mist in the mountains, spreading over the top of the cliff. Only then did Jin Tong suddenly open her eyes. She leaped to her feet and jumped straight to the edge of the cliff, staring tensely down into the abyss. Xiao Bai also got up and trotted to her side. "Boss, with this kind of commotion, could it be that master is about to?" "Uncle." Jin Tong seemed not to hear Xiao Bai at all. Her expression was extraordinarily complicated as she murmured the word softly. There was hope in her voice and worry as well, along with excitement and unease. Then came an explosive boom. The sky above the abyss suddenly shook violently. Visible threads of the world's origin energy gathered from every direction, swirling high in the air and forming a gigantic funnel of spiritual energy that poured an immense amount of power down into the abyss. In a valley not far from the abyss, a giant face appeared on the trunk of a massive verdant tree. Its eyes turned toward the abyss, and the roots beneath it suddenly trembled violently. The entire tree body lurched forward and began moving. The ground in the valley split apart. Dense ancient trees on both sides shifted away, making room for a broad path through the middle, so the enormous tree could rush forward. The face on the tree was filled with confusion. After racing nearly 100 li, it suddenly noticed that, above the abyss, not only was the boundless world's origin energy still pouring downward, but thick baleful aura was also rising endlessly out of the abyss. Its writhing roots came to a sudden stop, and a trace of fear appeared in its eyes. After hesitating for a moment, this tree demon, whose aura had already reached the Tai realm, actually turned around and retreated back into the valley without looking back once. At the same time, in the empty air more than 1,000 li below the abyss, Han Li stood suspended like a blazing golden sun. Dazzling golden light radiated from his body, forcing all dense baleful aura back to a distance of over 10 zhang. That brilliant golden light condensed into countless fine golden threads, weaving themselves into a cocoon of light around him and wrapping his whole body inside, leaving only a vague shadowy outline visible. The vast world's origin energy poured down from above the abyss like an immense golden waterfall, drenching the giant golden cocoon and forming a huge vortex of spiritual energy. Wave after wave of ripples spread out from it like tides. The abyss, which had not been illuminated for untold ages, was still filled with dense baleful aura that had not yet fully dissipated. Under the radiance of that golden light, however, a hazy glow rose within it like mist, scattering a dazzling brilliance. This extraordinary sight of the golden waterfall descending lasted for 3 whole days before the momentum finally began to weaken. Then a long, exhilarated howl suddenly rang out from the abyss. From within the enormous golden cocoon, a blazing golden light rose like a sword and cleaved straight through it, splitting the cocoon neatly in two. Han Li's figure flashed out. Golden light blazed in his eyes as he opened his mouth and inhaled toward the surroundings. A fierce gale instantly erupted. All the golden light within the abyss rushed toward his mouth like a great river flowing backward and was swallowed completely. Even the golden cocoon itself scattered into countless sparkling motes of gold and flew into his mouth as well. At the same time, another golden point of light appeared on Han Li's back, flickering bright and dim as it continuously absorbed the remaining spiritual energy between heaven and earth. At last, the 84th immortal acupoint had opened. Like the immortal acupoints before it, this one also contained a strand of black baleful aura, even thicker and more obvious than the earlier ones. Han Li's expression remained calm as still water. With a wave of his hand, golden light flared before him, and a huge golden treasured wheel appeared, spinning endlessly as it released wave after wave of golden ripples. More than 400 clusters of time law markings lit up across the golden wheel, blazing with dazzling light. Wrapped around the wheel itself were strands of crystalline time silk, and upon counting them carefully, there were no fewer than 18. Han Li lifted his hand. Those 18 strands of time silk instantly straightened like needles and shot toward him. But just before reaching his hand, the golden threads softened again and coiled around his fingers. Feeling the fluctuations coming from the time silk, Han Li murmured to himself, "I never expected that after fully cultivating the 4th layer of the mantra transforming wheel scripture, I would unknowingly refine so many strands of time silk. This raises the power of the mantra treasured wheel by another margin. When I face that gold-devouring immortal next, I will have a few more chances in hand." With that, he waved his hand again and drew the mantra treasured wheel back into his body. As all the golden light faded away, the dense black baleful aura around him once again spread forward and submerged him. Because Han Li had absorbed quite a lot of the baleful aura here, it was no longer as dense as when he first arrived. But farther down, deeper into the abyss, everything was still shrouded in darkness, and the concentration of fiendish energy had hardly changed. Han Li drew in a long breath, sat down cross-legged, took out a pill to stabilize his realm, swallowed it, and closed his eyes to regulate his breathing. After 3 full days and nights, Han Li finally opened his eyes again and rose from the air. There is not much time left before the deadline that man mentioned. It is time to meet with fellow Taoists and the others and prepare our response, he murmured, looking up toward the mouth of the abyss. Just as he was about to fly upward, a familiar voice suddenly appeared in his sea of consciousness. "Fellow Taoist Han, now that you've come this far, are you truly not curious enough to descend to the very bottom of the abyss and see what kind of strangeness lies there?" Han Li's expression shifted slightly. Frowning, he said, "Mo Guang, did I not already cut off your senses from the outside world? How do you know where we are?" "Fellow Taoist Han, please do not misunderstand. This really cannot be blamed on me. Your internal accumulation of baleful aura suddenly increased so dramatically that my connection with the outside world strengthened a little on its own. But only that much," Mo Guang explained quickly. "Baleful aura? Aren't you an extraterritorial devil? How can baleful aura be of use to you as well?" Han Li asked, one brow lifting slightly. "Baleful aura is not something only humans or demonic beasts possess. Any being that engages in slaughter can condense it. And our heavenly devil race is far more sensitive to such negative energies than your human race," Mo Guang said with a light laugh. While speaking with him, Han Li secretly examined both himself and Mo Guang. Seeing that there truly was nothing unusual, he relaxed slightly and asked, "Fellow Taoist Mo Guang, since you suddenly suggested that I investigate the bottom of the abyss, have you discovered something?" "Well, to be honest, I have not discovered anything certain. I only have a faint sense that something very unusual exists below. I was merely offering a suggestion. If fellow Taoist Han feels it is not worth seeing, then let it go. There is no need to take it seriously, Mo Guang said, then fell silent. Since fellow Taoist Mo Guang has sensed something, then there is no harm in taking a look, Han Li said after a brief silence. With that, he leaped forward and continued flying deeper into the abyss. After descending several hundred more li, the baleful aura around him became even heavier. Even with Han Li's current cultivation and the strength of his divine sense, he still felt somewhat uncomfortable. Now he had already reached the late golden immortal stage. After using baleful aura for so long to force open his immortal acupoints, both his body and his soul had undergone subtle changes, allowing him to gradually blend with this environment of fiendish energy. Still, because the deadline was approaching, he had no intention of continuing to use the baleful aura to increase his cultivation. He had already made up his mind that if the fiendish energy ever exceeded the limit of what he could bear, he would stop descending immediately and turn back. But right then, within his line of sight, a gigantic emerald green skeleton suddenly appeared. Compared to the bones he had seen embedded in the cliff walls before, this skeleton was so enormous that it was no different in size from that gold-devouring immortal beast. Its body was long and narrow. A single spine rose and curved like a mountain ridge, with rings of ribs growing in rows on either side. All four limb bones still remained below, each one planted upright. Not a single section collapsed. It looked as though the creature were still standing exactly as it had in life. Han Li flew down along the ridge of the skeleton's back until his feet finally touched the ground. By his estimate, he was now at least 2,000 li below the mouth of the pit above. A whole 2,000 li deep was something he had never heard of before. After a moment's thought, he went around the mountain-like body of the skeleton and came to its front. There he saw that the massive skull of the strange beast rested on the ground, and from the hollow sockets of its two giant eyes, pitch-black baleful aura was continuously rising and drifting into the empty air around it. The skull was broad at the top and narrow below. From the end of its protruding snout jutted two enormous front teeth the size of gates. It looked exactly like a giant rat. Han Li immediately thought of the green giant rat he had seen before in the baleful illusion, and a thought surfaced in his mind. Could this be the remains of that giant rat? At the very center of the rat's forehead was a cleanly severed wound that ran straight through to the back of its skull, as though some weapon had pierced it through. It was clearly the fatal blow that had killed the giant demonic rat. There was no longer the slightest trace of spiritual power left in the bones, and yet when Han Li stood before them, his heart still trembled. A sense of smallness rose in him, as though he were standing before a mountain. What caught his attention most were the two giant front teeth like massive gates. Unlike the jade-green color of the rest of the skeleton, these were a much deeper shade, more like dark green duckweed floating on water, and distinct fluctuations of law power were radiating from them. As doubt rose in his heart, Han Li was just about to step closer and inspect them carefully when the corner of his eye twitched. Behind the giant rat's skull, there lay a man's corpse in a purple robe. "What is this?" Han Li murmured in surprise, one brow rising. The corpse still retained a human shape, but the skin was bluish-purple and the body was withered and gaunt. The clothing had long since rotted into rags, and a layer of black dust-like particles covered it. Han Li walked around the rat's skull and approached. At once, an incomparably dense wave of baleful aura rushed toward him, forcing his steps to slow and drawing his brows together tightly. A flicker passed through his eyes as he looked at the corpse's face. Only then did he realize that the man's appearance was not actually old. It was only because his cheeks and eye sockets had sunken so deeply that he looked like an ancient elder at death's door. Inside those hollow sockets, the eyes had not closed. They stared outward as though he had died with unfinished grievance. What shocked Han Li most, however, was that the pupils were completely gray-white, like the rolled eyes of a dead fish, utterly devoid of life. Gray immortal. No wonder that aura felt strangely familiar just now, Han Li muttered, his gaze flickering. The corpse in purple robes before him was just like Mou, whom he had seen before in the Minghan immortal manor. It too was a gray immortal. His eyes moved back and forth between the man's corpse and the giant rat skeleton, then swept over the congealed baleful chi around them. In an instant he understood. The reason the baleful chi in this abyss was so dense and terrifying was because it came from these two. Hanli did not approach too closely. He merely circled the gray immortal's body once. There were not many visible wounds on it, only a jagged injury at the right temple. The edges of the wound looked as though they had rotted away, covered in a layer of dark green corrosion. Judging from the scene, the giant rat and this gray immortal must have fought a fierce battle here long ago, ultimately perishing together in this place. This abyss, 2,000 miles deep, was perhaps the very scar left behind by that battle. Hanli withdrew his gaze from the gray immortal and looked once more at the giant rat's remains, a thoughtful look flashing through his eyes. It has been dead for who knows how many tens of thousands of years, and yet such strong spiritual power still remains in its bones. If Jintong were allowed to devour it, perhaps it could raise her cultivation another level or two. At that thought, his eyes shifted to the rat's two enormous dark green fangs, each as large as a door panel. With a lift of one hand, light flashed in his palm, and a green bamboo cloudswarm sword appeared. Immortal spiritual power surged through his body as he swung the sword toward the root of one of the fangs. A sharp metallic ring split the air. A fierce sword light slashed down at the base of the fang, and dark green light immediately flared there. A ring of violent sword chi rippled outward together with waves of dark green radiance, and from it came a fluctuation thick with corrosive force. Green light flared around Hanli. He swept his sleeve sharply, cutting off the approaching aura. More than 10 breaths later, the fluctuations finally faded. Hanli arched a brow, not alarmed but pleased instead. He had not used his full strength just now, but that strike was no ordinary blow either. The fact that the fang could withstand it meant he had truly stumbled upon a treasure. With that thought, light flashed again in his hand. At the same time, he summoned 3 green bamboo cloudswarm swords. The 3 merged into one, golden arcs of lightning twining around the blade as the ancient sword chi erupted together and hacked down at the root of the fang. With a crack, both door-sized dark green fangs snapped at last and fell from the rat's mouth. Hanli let out a light breath, put away the sword and swept his sleeve, collecting the fangs into his storage bracelet. Then he turned and walked to the gray immortal's corpse, examining it from head to toe. The purple robe on the gray immortal had likely once been an excellent protective garment, but it was already badly tattered. Hanli waved a hand and released a stream of green light, turning the corpse over. A dull thud sounded. A gray cloth pouch fell from the body. His eyes lit up. He hurriedly picked it up, and after sending his spiritual sense inside, delight immediately surfaced in his expression. It was indeed a storage treasure. With a hand seal, he gave it a shake, and with a clatter a small pile of items spilled onto the ground. Hanli frowned slightly. He had not expected there to be so little inside, though it was still better than the giant rat. Most of the items were various materials, nearly all in dull shades of gray and black. Then his gaze casually swept over several fist-sized black crystals, and he gave a soft cry of surprise. They were pitch black and glossy, shrouded in a dim black sheen, as if they could swallow all light around them. At the same time, they emitted a strong fluctuation of law power. They were none other than black marrow crystals, the main material once used to refine the void essence pill. And these pieces, whether in color or in the strength of the law fluctuations they gave off, were far superior to the black marrow crystals Jiaosan had once given him. Hanli raised one piece with green light, inspected it carefully for a moment, and then put all of them away. Aside from the black marrow crystals, Hanli did not recognize most of the materials on the ground, but many of them emitted powerful waves of aura no weaker than the crystals. 3 of them in particular stood out, their aura even stronger. One was a gray round bone about a foot long, hard and weathered. Apart from a few gray patterns on the surface, it looked almost no different from an ordinary stone. It was clearly ancient, though what creature it belonged to he could not tell. Another was a pitch-black spirit flower the size of a bowl. Every petal bore blood-red markings, and together they formed something that looked eerily like a grinning face. The last was a bottle of grayish-white liquid. A layer of pale gray flame-like light floated on its surface, yet it gave off a piercing chill that could be felt even through the bottle. Hanli had no idea what kind of spirit fluid it was. The aura of these materials was utterly different from ordinary spiritual materials. Hanli guessed they were likely specialties of the Gray Realm. After a brief inspection, he swept them all away. Only 3 things remained on the ground now: 2 immortal treasures and a black jade box. One was a pitch-black spear. Its shaft looked ancient and unadorned, but the spearhead gleamed darkly, and within it a faint red streak could be seen, radiating a grim and murderous aura. The other immortal treasure was a strip of gray gauze, thin as cicada wings. Countless star-like patterns covered its surface, and it gave off a faint gray glow. Hanli bent down, grasped the black spear, and lifted it. His expression changed at once. It did not look large, yet it was astonishingly heavy, almost comparable to his heavy water true wheel. He exerted force in his arm and raised the spear, then snapped his wrist. The spear whistled through the air, and 3 dazzling blossoms of spear light bloomed, striking the empty space before him before exploding outward. The nearby void trembled violently and took quite some time to settle. "A fine spear," Hanli praised softly. He then willed it and poured immortal spiritual power into the weapon. But no matter how much power he sent in, it was like mud sinking into the sea. The black spear showed no response at all. His brow lifted, and then he understood. The energy within a gray immortal was entirely different from immortal spiritual power. This spear was most likely a weapon only a gray immortal could wield, so it was natural that his immortal spiritual power could not activate it. A trace of regret flashed through his eyes. He swung the spear twice more and was just about to put it away. At that moment, however, a thin layer of black light suddenly surfaced on the spear. Hanli froze. When he had just swung the spear, he had inadvertently infused a trace of baleful chi from his body into it. He had not expected the spear to actually respond. Could it be that baleful chi can drive a gray immortal weapon? He thought, and immediately began circulating the baleful chi within himself. With a boom, the baleful chi he had accumulated surged out, turning into rolling black mist that coiled around his body. He guided that baleful chi and slowly poured it into the black spear. The spear instantly shone with brilliant black radiance, deep and unfathomable, as if it could swallow souls whole. The blood-red streak in the spearhead blazed even brighter, releasing strand after strand of crimson light that coiled around the tip while letting out shrill wailing cries that made the heart tremble. Hanli showed a look of surprise. His baleful chi really could activate a gray immortal weapon. Still, it was only activating it, nothing more. The quality of this black spear was extremely high, and its true power was clearly far beyond this. He put the spear away and picked up the strip of gray gauze. It was soft in his hand, like a wisp of drifting cloud. It was as light as a feather, almost weightless. Hanli turned it over a few times, then let baleful chi roll from his body into the gauze. At once, the gauze thickened several times over and released a layer of gray glow. At the same time, simple ancient patterns surfaced across its surface. They were utterly unlike ordinary spiritual or formation patterns, more like careless scribbles, and yet they carried an inexplicable profundity. The thickened gauze now gave off a strange feeling, soft yet firm, astonishingly resilient. Hanli nodded. This was clearly a top-tier defensive treasure. But just then, his gaze sharpened and settled on those patterns. He let out a faint sound of surprise. The markings on the gray gauze seemed strangely familiar, as if he had seen them somewhere before. Then it came to him. He waved a hand and took out a silver jade box. Inside was a soft gray object, the mysterious gray cloth he had once obtained from Xiong-shan. He spread the cloth open. On it were also faint traces of ancient, mysterious patterns. Though they differed slightly in detail from those on the gray gauze, the overall style was identical. They were clearly the same kind of spiritual markings. So this gray cloth is also something from the gray realm, Hanli thought. He tried infusing baleful chi into the cloth, but it showed no reaction. His brows rose. Had he guessed wrong? After a brief pause, the black mist around his body thickened several times over, and he continued pouring baleful chi into the cloth. Time passed little by little. In the blink of an eye, a quarter of an hour had gone by, yet the cloth still showed no change. Seeing this, Hanli could not help but wonder if he really had been mistaken. A while later, there was still no reaction. Hanli was beginning to lose interest and was just about to stop. Then suddenly, a faint layer of gray light appeared on the surface of the cloth. It was so pale it was almost invisible to the naked eye. Han Li's eyes lit up at once. His guess had been correct after all. He took a deep breath and poured baleful qi into the cloth with all his strength. The glow slowly grew brighter, and the faint ancient patterns on the cloth gradually lit up and became clearer, spreading rapidly across its surface. But after that, no matter how much baleful qi Han Li continued to feed it, the light grew no brighter, nor did any new patterns appear. It seems I simply do not have enough baleful qi. This is as far as I can activate it. He stopped, looked over the cloth once more, and put it away again. The cloth had only been an accidental acquisition in the first place. Han Li had never paid it much attention. Discovering its secret was naturally good, but failing to do so did not matter much either. He then put away the gray gauze as well and finally picked up the black jade box. A gray talisman was stuck to the box, clearly serving as a seal. Han Li stared at it for a moment and found that the runes on it were utterly different from ordinary talismans. Instead, they bore some resemblance to the patterns on the gray cloth and the gauze. A thought moved in his mind, and he flicked out a spell formula toward the talisman. Gray light flashed on the talisman and shook the formula away. Han Li's brow twitched. Golden light spread from his palm, carrying a faint power of the time law, and touched the talisman, but it too was repelled. His expression remained calm. After a moment's thought, he began circulating baleful qi and used it to probe the talisman. This time gray light flickered across its surface, then quickly dimmed. It no longer repelled the incoming force as it had before. Han Li's heart stirred. He immediately directed more baleful qi into the talisman. The sealing structure inside was not especially complicated. He quickly understood it and began breaking it apart. A quarter of an hour later, with a soft pop, the gray talisman flashed and flew off the box on its own. The black jade box opened by itself, revealing what lay inside. It was a crimson mask. Han Li picked it up and froze slightly. He was all too familiar with this mask. It was the crimson mask of a son of reincarnation from the reincarnation hall, very similar to his own dragon head mask. At the top were two small words. Dragon 4. Dragon 4. Could this gray immortal have been a member of the reincarnation hall? Han Li murmured. The mask Jiaosan had once given him had been marked Dragon 5. He did not dwell on it. He put both the mask and the jade box away, then turned his gaze back to the gray immortal's corpse and looked it over once more. At that moment, Ma Guang's voice suddenly rang out in his mind. Fellow Taoist Han, it seems our luck is truly excellent. To find an intact gray immortal corpse here, and one whose cultivation in life was probably already at the Tai stage. Even if it was powerful in life, it is nothing more than a dried corpse now. Why is fellow Taoist Ma Guang so excited? Han Li asked indifferently. Fellow Taoist Han, that is not quite right. Back when I followed Ma Liang, I obtained a fragmentary scroll in some ruins. It recorded certain information about gray immortals, including a secret art that allows one to refine a gray immortal corpse into an external incarnation. Ma Liang wanted to obtain a gray immortal corpse for years but never succeeded. Who would have thought we would encounter one here? Ma Guang said. Is that true? Han Li's heart stirred. He had already seen how formidable Mou, that Tai gray immortal, had been inside the Minghan immortal manor. If he could obtain a Tai gray immortal avatar of his own, his confidence in dealing with the Tai gold-devouring immortal beast later would increase greatly. How would I dare deceive you, fellow Taoist Han? Every word is true. Gray immortals are different from ordinary cultivators. After they die, the energy within their bodies does not dissipate quickly as yours does. Most of it remains sealed inside, which makes them suitable for refinement into incarnations. Your luck is extraordinary. If you can refine this Tai gray immortal corpse successfully, you will possess a Tai stage gray immortal clone, perfect for dealing with that Tai gold-devouring immortal, Ma Guang said. Let me see the method, Han Li replied without committing himself. A black shadow flashed beneath his feet, and Ma Guang's figure emerged. Han Li took out a blank jade slip and handed it over. Ma Guang accepted it and quickly recorded the method, then returned it a moment later. Han Li accepted the jade slip and sent his spiritual sense into it. His brows slowly furrowed. The refinement method described inside was highly unconventional and very different from ordinary methods of refining avatars. It required several major prerequisites. The first was that the refiner had to possess abundant baleful qi, and during the refinement process, inject that baleful qi into several crucial points inside the gray immortal corpse, allowing control later on. The second was even more troublesome. The refiner had to use a soul-splitting secret art, first dividing off a portion of his own soul, then fusing it with baleful qi through another technique to transform it into a baleful soul, which would then be implanted into the corpse. Only with these two layers of control could the gray immortal incarnation be commanded properly. The first condition is not much of an issue, Hanli said after a long silence. But this second one. If I split my soul and transform it into a baleful soul, what damage would it cause to the original body? The damage from splitting the soul is naturally unavoidable, Ma Guang replied. And once transformed into a baleful soul, it will constantly send certain violent, bloodthirsty, and other negative emotions back to the original body. But this cannot be helped. The energy inside a gray immortal is entirely opposed to that of ordinary cultivators. The two naturally suppress one another. If an ordinary soul entered a gray immortal corpse, it would likely be erased in no time at all. Only by becoming a baleful soul can it remain for long. After hearing that, the heat in Han Li's heart gradually cooled. If this corpse could be refined into an avatar at only minor cost, he would naturally welcome it. But this soul-splitting technique would not only greatly damage the soul, it would likely affect his clarity of mind as well. That was a price he was unwilling to pay. If you feel the impact would be too great, Ma Guang said, glancing at Han Li, there is actually another way. What way? Han Li asked, lifting his eyes. It is simple. Let me take the place of your split soul and enter the gray immortal corpse, Ma Guang said with a smile. You? Han Li asked, looking startled. I am an extraterritorial heavenly demon, formless and incorporeal, very similar to a soul. By nature, I also possess strong resistance to the energy inside a gray immortal. Entering such a body should not be a problem, Ma Guang said, nodding. Han Li did not reply immediately. He remained silent for a moment before asking, Fellow Taoist Ma Guang, since the time we signed our contract back in the spirit realm, how long has it been now? I often sleep, so my sense of time is vague, but it should be over 10,000 years. Why do you ask? Ma Guang said, caught off guard. We have been together for so many years. You should know my temperament well. I would never agree to that soul-splitting method. From the very moment you proposed helping me refine this gray immortal incarnation, your true aim was already to enter it yourself, was it not? Han Li said calmly, looking at him. Ma Guang's face stiffened. Then he gave a bitter smile. Truly, nothing escapes your notice, fellow Taoist Han. I do indeed want to enter that gray immortal corpse, but I have no intention of harming you. I only want to lend you my strength. That Tai gold-devouring immortal could catch up to us at any time. If you die to it, my own end will not be good either. Oh? Only for that? Han Li asked, one brow rising. Of course not entirely, Ma Guang admitted with a sigh. I also want to improve my own strength. You have already reached the late golden immortal stage. Jintong and Daoxia have long since reached the golden immortal level as well, while I am still stuck at the true immortal stage. Being left so far behind by all of you is not a pleasant feeling. Han Li looked at Ma Guang, his eyes flickering, but said nothing for a time. Then suddenly he raised a hand and sent out a stream of green light that wrapped around the gray immortal corpse. The green light pulsed slightly, and within it appeared strands of crystalline green silk that wound around the corpse, quickly wrapping it into a green cocoon. The dense baleful qi emitted by the gray immortal was sealed within at once, unable to leak out in the slightest. We will discuss this later, Han Li said as he waved the green cocoon away. Ma Guang nodded. His figure flickered and once more sank into Han Li's shadow. Han Li turned back toward the giant rat skeleton and frowned. Though the bones still brimmed with spiritual power, they were also one of the sources of the baleful qi in this place, and the baleful qi contained within them was too dense. Neither Jintong nor the Pishio could devour them directly. Still, this was not an unsolvable problem. Han Li pondered for a moment, then produced a stack of black formation flags and plates and began setting up an array around the giant rat corpse. A full day and night later, a gourd-shaped formation appeared around the skeleton, enveloping the enormous remains within it. Inside the formation were 4 black rings the size of round tables. The array patterns around those 4 rings were the most concentrated, marking them as key nodes. Han Li chanted under his breath and struck out a spell. Lines of black spirit light lit up throughout the gourd formation, and the 4 ring nodes in particular blazed brightly, sending up 4 pillars of black light. Like living tentacles, the 4 black pillars twisted and swayed in midair. With a low shout, Han Li changed the hand seals before him. At once, the 4 black pillars shot forward and plunged into the giant rat skeleton. The surging baleful chi radiating from the bones abruptly halted. In the next moment, countless black runes emerged within the skeleton. Then with a muffled boom, it was as if a mountain flood that had been building for ages burst forth all at once. The baleful chi from the skeleton thickened immediately and began pouring out several times faster than before. Endless, almost tangible streams of baleful chi surged out like a tide and spread in all directions, darkening the entire bottom of the abyss. Seeing this, Han Li relaxed slightly. This formation was something he had improvised by modifying several other arrays. He had not been certain it would work, but fortunately it had. His 10 fingers moved like spinning wheels, rapidly driving the formation. But just then the giant rat skeleton suddenly shuddered. The enormous bones trembled, letting out a string of cracking sounds, and in the empty eye sockets 2 ghostly green points lit up like eyes and turned to look straight at Han Li. The instant that gaze fell on him, Han Li felt as though he had plunged into an ice pit. His heart sank and cold sweat broke out on his back. In his mind flashed the scene from the earlier illusion, where this giant rat skeleton had come back to life. He no longer cared about the formation. Green light exploded from his body as he shot backward. With a crack, the giant rat skeleton's mouth suddenly opened, and a dense green blur shot out like lightning, hurtling straight at Han Li. The blur was astonishingly fast, far faster than Han Li. In the blink of an eye, it was already in front of him, trying to burrow into his body. At that moment, thunder erupted. Countless dazzling golden arcs burst out from Han Li's body, swiftly converging into a thick bolt of golden lightning that crashed viciously toward the green blur. A thunderous roar shook the air. The instant the golden lightning struck the blur, it exploded into countless arcs that blasted in every direction like a golden sun flashing into existence and vanishing in the same breath, making the nearby void tremble violently. The dense green blur that had flown out from the skeleton was knocked back hard, sent flying over 10 yards. Yet it was not seriously injured. It steadied itself at once and lunged toward Han Li again, even faster than before. With a single flicker, it vanished in midair. Han Li now shone with intense golden light. His cultivation art was running at full power as he let out a shout. A flash of gold appeared behind him as the mantra treasure wheel emerged. Endless golden ripples spread from it, forming a field of golden waves. Everything around him froze in an instant. The churning baleful chi, the trembling void, and that green blur only a few feet away from him. Han Li exhaled deeply, fine cold sweat beading on his forehead. That green blur was terrifyingly fast. Their brief exchange had taken place in the space of a lightning flash. If not for his quick reaction and his mastery of the time law, it would already have entered his body. He wiped away the sweat from his forehead and looked toward the blur, curiosity rising in his eyes. But then, the blur that had hung motionless in the frozen field suddenly quivered. Bright green light erupted from it, actually staining the surrounding golden ripples green. Han Li was startled. Before he could react, a powerful force of law burst from the blur. A green line shot out from within it, unbelievably swift, slashing straight at Han Li wherever it passed. It tore a long seam through the golden ripples. Though cutting through the frozen field clearly consumed much of its power, and it quickly dimmed, it still reached Han Li in the end. The green blur quivered again, suddenly flattening into something as thin as a sheet of paper, and followed right behind the green line. In the blink of an eye, it crossed the short distance between them. Han Li had only just lifted his hand halfway when the green blur flashed and entered his body. The moment it entered, it transformed into a vast pure mass of baleful chi that spread wildly through him. Wherever it passed, Han Li's meridians turned icy cold and numb. He could no longer summon even a trace of immortal spiritual power, and his body could not move at all. The golden light on him melted away like snow under a blazing sun. The field of golden ripples vanished as well, and his entire body became shrouded in a green glow. Everything had happened far too fast. Even with Han Li's usual sharp reactions, he had been subdued before he could properly respond. His heart sank at once, but he did not panic. His thoughts raced, searching frantically for a solution. At that moment, a savage, cackling laugh suddenly rang out in his mind. Within Han Li's sea of consciousness, a dim green light appeared. It took the shape of a green rat. The moment it appeared, it bared its ferocity and pounced toward a golden child seated cross-legged with eyes shut. Courting death. The golden child suddenly opened its eyes, roared, and rubbed its hands together before pointing forward. A crystalline sword shadow immediately appeared and slashed across the green rat. With a tearing sound, the green rat was cut cleanly in half. Yet the severed rat did not seem harmed in the slightest. It turned into two masses of green light and continued rushing toward the golden child. The golden child frowned and lifted both hands again. Two crystalline chains appeared and lashed out like lightning, wrapping around the two masses of green light. Yet they did not crush them. The two lights struggled violently within the chains, letting out faint squealing cries. Though the green lights were dim, they contained astonishing soul power. Under their struggle, the two chains trembled violently, already showing signs of breaking loose. The golden child formed another seal with one hand. The two chains immediately twisted together, and several more crystalline chains flashed into existence nearby and wound around them as well. Amid the crisp clinking of chains, a prison of chains took shape. It was the divine sense cage technique, and the two green lights were sealed inside it. The two lights flashed and merged again into a single green rat. Rage and shock filled its eyes as it slammed wildly against the cage and bit savagely at the chains with its teeth. The cage shook violently but showed no sign of breaking. Yet before Han Li could breathe a sigh of relief, another change occurred. Once the green rat was imprisoned, the pure baleful chi brought by the green blur lost control and became chaotic. Han Li's immortal spiritual power still could not move, but the baleful chi contained within his own body sensed that pure energy and surged out of its own accord. A dense layer of black mist erupted from his body and churned violently. With a rumble, the baleful chi brought by the green blur immediately merged into the black mist around him. It was as though the mist had swallowed some supreme tonic and began to swell wildly. For reasons Han Li did not understand, the profound fiend nether spirit art began circulating madly on its own, rapidly absorbing the pure baleful chi brought by the green blur. Inside Han Li's sea of consciousness, the green rat trapped in the divine sense cage suddenly showed a look of terror and let out a piercing scream. The green light around its body flickered violently. As the pure baleful chi continued to be absorbed away, its body slowly began to shrink, like a punctured balloon losing air. Seeing this, Han Li froze for a moment. Then something seemed to occur to him, and a complicated look flashed across his eyes. Within his sea of consciousness, the golden child did nothing more. It simply maintained the spell and kept the green rat trapped. As the profound fiend nether spirit art ran faster and faster, the baleful chi around Han Li also began to churn, surging into his body like a tide. In particular, the dense baleful chi emanating from the giant rat skeleton nearby formed into a thick pillar that poured endlessly into him. At this moment, the speed at which he was absorbing baleful chi was more than 10 times faster than when he had previously been trying to force open his immortal apertures. A huge torrent of baleful chi flooded into Han Li, sweeping through his body like a mighty river and slamming directly into the closed immortal apertures. It began opening them on its own. Han Li was already completely stunned, yet his body still could not move in the slightest. He could only watch helplessly as everything unfolded. Under the impact of that raging torrent, his immortal apertures began to loosen rapidly, then burst open one after another. In only a short time, 3 immortal apertures had already been forced open. Joy surged through Han Li's heart. But very quickly that joy became difficult to sustain. A bloody red flush spread across his face, giving him a frightening appearance. His apertures were being rammed open with brutal force, and the meridians throughout his body shook violently. The pain was more than 100 times worse than when he had previously used baleful chi to attack the apertures himself. Yet he could not even circulate his cultivation to protect his body. He could only grit his teeth and endure it. As time passed, the The profound fiend nether spirit art in Han Li's body ran faster and faster. The pure baleful chi brought by the green blur was soon completely absorbed into his own. Inside the divine sense cage in his sea of consciousness, the green rat, now several times smaller than before, let out a final scream of despair. With a bang it shattered completely and vanished. Seeing that, Han Li relaxed slightly and withdrew the divine sense cage. Without the invading baleful chi controlling him, his body also returned to his own command. Yet the profound fiend nether spirit art still remained outside his control, continuing to run wildly, devouring the baleful chi around him and crashing into more immortal apertures. With two muffled booms, two more apertures were forced open. Han Li's body shuddered, the red on his face deepening. A thread of blood slipped from the corner of his mouth, and his chest rose and fell violently. His aura had become erratic. Alarmed, Han Li hurriedly circulated immortal spiritual power within his body with all his strength to protect his flesh and meridians. As for the profound fiend nether spirit art, after a rapid turn of thoughts, he did not try to stop it. Time continued to flow. One muffled sound after another echoed from within Han Li's body as more and more immortal apertures were forced open. No one knew how much time had passed. By now the baleful chi around Han Li had reached a terrifying degree. It was no longer mere mist but had become nearly tangible, leaping around him like clusters of black flames. His face was now crimson enough to seem ready to drip blood. Two streaks of blood trailed from the corners of his mouth, making him look almost ferocious. He was clearly badly injured. Yet his eyes were filled only with joy. At this point, 106 immortal apertures inside his body had already been opened. The profound fiend nether spirit art was still running like mad, greedily devouring the baleful chi around him. Then another muffled boom rang out inside him, and yet another immortal aperture opened. Han Li's body shook. He could not help coughing up a mouthful of blood, but the joy in his eyes only deepened. With 107 immortal apertures opened, his cultivation was already close to the peak of the golden immortal stage. One more step and he would reach the Tai realm. At that very moment, the 107 immortal apertures within him suddenly seemed to resonate with one another, trembling all at once as they rapidly absorbed the spiritual energy around them. Vast amounts of worldly spiritual energy poured into Han Li's body, and transformed into streams of pure immortal spiritual power that surged through his meridians. The profound fiend nether spirit art finally seemed satisfied. It gradually slowed and then came to a complete stop. Han Li felt as though all strength had left him, and he collapsed onto the ground. Only after a long while did he take out a healing pill, swallow it, straighten himself up, and sit with his eyes closed to regulate his breathing. Much later he opened his eyes. Most of the blood-red flesh on his face had faded, and his injuries were clearly under control. Han Li drew in a deep breath and stood, feeling the explosive increase of immortal spiritual power within him. His emotions surged, and he could not help clenching his fist hard. What had just happened had been dangerous in the extreme. It seemed that somewhere within this giant rat skeleton there had remained a trace of remnant soul, or perhaps after countless tens of thousands of years, the skeleton had developed its own consciousness. It had tried to use the boundless baleful chi it carried to invade his sea of consciousness. Had it been any other immortal, even a Tai cultivator, faced with that scale of baleful chi impact, the body would have been completely paralyzed and even the soul might have collapsed. If the creature had succeeded, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Fortunately, Han Li had previously obtained from MOU the profound fiend nether spirit art, a method that used baleful chi to assault immortal apertures, and he had already cultivated in this baleful environment for quite some time. On top of that, his spiritual sense was abnormally powerful. Only because of all that had he barely turned danger into safety, and by a strange stroke of fate, after being flooded with baleful chi, his strength had advanced by leaps and bounds. Now he stood only a hair's breadth away from the Tai realm. Still, this sudden leap in cultivation had come far too strangely, and the amount of baleful chi now accumulated inside his body was immense enough to leave him uneasy. Han Li steadied himself, then turned his gaze back to the giant rat skeleton not far away. By now, the baleful aura inside the bones had thinned considerably compared to before. He did not approach at once. Instead, he formed a hand seal and activated the array surrounding the skeleton, gradually dispersing the remaining aura. After about half an hour, the baleful aura within the bones was finally driven out completely, leaving not even the slightest trace behind. Now the giant rat skeleton looked even more translucent, glowing with a soft green radiance. Faint streams of spiritual power could almost be seen flowing through it. Only after sweeping his eyes over it several times did Hanli wave a hand and put away the array tools around the skeleton. His figure then suddenly turned into a streak of azure light and shot upward. Above the abyss on a rocky ledge, Jean Tong paced anxiously near the cliff's edge. From time to time, she craned her neck over the precipice to peer down into the depths below. "Boss, stop circling already. Master will definitely be fine," the white jade Pichio said lazily as it lay sprawled on the ground. "What do you know? There isn't much left before that 20-year deadline, and Uncle still hasn't come back. Something must have happened. No, I have to go down and check." Jean Tong frowned tightly, clearly having made up her mind. Dahua Xie floated forward and blocked her just as she was about to leap off the cliff. "I should go instead. I'm a puppet body after all. The influence on me will be less." A trace of gratitude flashed through Jean Tong's eyes. She was just about to speak when her brows suddenly lifted, and she hurriedly looked down into the abyss. A streak of azure light was rushing upward from below, tearing through the thick baleful mist and reaching the cliff in moments. The light faded, revealing Hanli. "Uncle, why did it take you so, huh? Your cultivation." Jean Tong had meant to complain, but the instant she sensed Hanli's aura, her expression changed sharply and she cried out in shock. The white jade Pichio and Dahua Xie also noticed the difference and quickly gathered around him. "Peak Golden Immortal. Master, you're only one step away from advancing to the Tai Jade Immortal Realm, aren't you?" the white jade Pichio exclaimed in delight. "It seems fellow Taoist Han found another great opportunity at the bottom of the abyss," Dahua Xie said with admiration. "Uncle, did you find some treasure down there and secretly eat it all by yourself? Is that why your realm rose so much? And your eyes, why did they turn gray? You look incredible," Jean Tong said excitedly, only to suddenly notice that Hanli's eyes had briefly turned an ashen gray. Hanli's expression shifted slightly. He waved a hand, gathering moisture in his palm into a mirror of water, and looked into it. At a glance, he saw that his pupils truly had become veiled, turned silver gray as if covered by a layer of mist, looking strangely similar to those of gray immortals like Mou. "So that old fox Mou really did set me up. There really is something wrong with the gray immortal art. Profound baleful nether spirit technique," he thought to himself, though his face remained calm. "What's wrong, uncle? Did something happen?" Jean Tong asked when she saw him fall silent. "There was a slight problem with my cultivation earlier. I'll explain it to you later. I found something in the abyss that should be useful to you. Come down with me and take a look." "There really is treasure?" Jean Tong cried out happily. "Then why didn't I sense anything?" the white jade Pichio muttered, tilting its head in confusion. "You'll know once we get down there. Fellow Taoists, yeah. I'll have to trouble you to keep watch over the array up here." Hanli smiled, then glanced once more at the water mirror in his hand. To his surprise, the gray light in his pupils had already vanished, and his eyes had returned to normal. Dahua Xie said nothing, only nodded. Hanli cupped his fist slightly toward him, then released a burst of azure light that swept up Jean Tong and Little White. With a leap, he dove once more toward the bottom of the abyss, disappearing into the baleful mist. After absorbing all of the baleful aura from the giant rat's body, Hanli found that his sensitivity to that aura had changed somewhat. His body's rejection of it had weakened greatly. As for the effect of the thick aura on him, it had become almost negligible. He could now even manipulate it to a simple degree. After returning to the bottom of the abyss, Hanli stepped to the giant rat skeleton and rapidly formed hand seals. An invisible force burst out from his body, pushing back the surrounding baleful aura layer by layer and carving out a clear space untouched by it. With a wave of his hand, one golden light and one white light flashed, and Jean Tong and Little White reappeared. "What heavy baleful aura!" Jean Tong frowned the moment she appeared, clearly displeased. But the white jade Pichio's eyes lit up at once. This skeleton! Only then did Jean Tong notice the mountain-sized jade-green skeleton. A flash of delight also rose in her eyes. Golden light burst from her body, and she was just about to rush toward it when Hanli grabbed her and yanked her back. Don't be in such a hurry. This skeleton was previously saturated with baleful aura. I may have drawn it all out, but there's no guarantee it won't still affect you. Take a good look first before you start eating. Uncle, this little bit of leftover aura is nothing. Don't worry. I'm practically starving. If I eat this, maybe my realm will rise by another huge step. As she spoke, Jean Tong wiped the drool from the corner of her mouth, clearly unable to wait any longer. Master, can I have some of the skeleton too? The white jade Pichio asked as it shuffled closer. Hanli hesitated, then said, Little White, the situation is special right now. If this great demon skeleton can help Jean Tong break through another realm, then we'll have a much better chance when we face that gold-devouring immortal. You understand that, don't you? Then all right, Little White said reluctantly. If we can survive this disaster, I'll find another way to compensate you. In any case, I won't treat you unfairly. Hanli patted the white jade Pichio on the head in consolation. Jean Tong's attention had been fixed on the great demon skeleton the whole time. She had not even noticed what was happening beside her. Only now did she turn back, looking at Hanli eagerly. Uncle, can I eat it now? I really can't wait anymore. Hanli said nothing and simply nodded, somewhat helplessly. Jean Tong was overjoyed. Her body flashed and transformed into a gigantic golden beetle, which shot upward and pounced on the jade-green skeleton. Very soon, cracking and crunching sounds echoed through the abyss. The white jade Pichio could only smack its lips a few times from the side, eyes full of envy. But in less than a few dozen breaths, the golden light around Jean Tong suddenly dimmed. She changed back into a red-robed little girl, and flew down from the giant rat skeleton. Holding a jade-green long bone as thick as an adult arm, she came to Hanli and said in confusion, Uncle, take a look at this piece from the base of the tail. It nearly chipped my teeth. Hanli took the bone and examined it carefully. After a moment, his brows rose slightly in surprise. Then azure light lit up in his palm as he poured a thread of immortal spiritual power into it. The jade-green bone blazed with light. A restriction rune Hanli had never seen before appeared on its surface, releasing powerful spatial fluctuations. A spatial treasure. Could this be the giant rat's storage item? Hanli's gaze sharpened. He began circulating his immortal spiritual power and tried to activate the bone. Its light only grew brighter and brighter until it became clear and luminous like flawless jade. But that was all. No matter how Hanli tried, the bone did nothing except shine. He could neither activate nor refine it, and naturally had no way to investigate further. By now Jean Tong had already transformed back into the giant beetle, and resumed devouring the jade-green skeleton. After about the time it took to eat a meal, a streak of golden light flew down from the skeleton. It turned back into the red-robed girl, who wiped her mouth, patted her round belly, and let out a long satisfied burp. I'm full now. Little White, the rest is yours. She pointed generously with her thumb at the remaining half of the skeleton. The white jade Pichio froze for a moment. By the time it reacted, Jean Tong had already smacked it on the head. What are you standing around for? If you don't want it, I'll eat it all myself. But boss, the Pichio said, clearly drooling inside yet still hesitant. You call me boss so I can't treat you badly. Besides, this great demon skeleton really is nourishing. Just eating half of it already stuffed me. I'll need time just to digest it all. And before I ate plenty of your immortal artifacts inside your stomach. This can count as repayment. She patted her swollen belly and spoke in her usual carefree tone. The Pichio felt genuinely moved, but still did not move right away. Instead it turned to look at Hanli. Just listen to her, Hanli said after finishing a round of meditation. Thank you, boss. The white jade Pichio grinned. Its body suddenly expanded, and its mouth widened until it looked capable of swallowing heaven and earth itself. In one clean gulp, it swallowed the remaining skeleton whole. A moment later, light flashed over its body again, and it shrank back down to the size of a house dog. Little White, honestly, the way you can swallow things in one bite is something even this fairy envies, Jean Tong said, hands behind her back as she circled around it, clicking her tongue in amazement. All right. For the next while, the two of you should focus on refining what you just consumed, Hanli said with a smile. It was fine before you said that, uncle, but now that you mention it, I suddenly feel sleepy. Even as Jean Tong spoke, she was already yawning. Golden light flared over her body, and in no time she turned into a palm-sized golden beetle and dropped toward the ground. Hanli stretched out his hand, caught her in his palm, and stored her inside a spirit beast pouch. Master, this skeleton is different from anything else. I may also need to go into secluded cultivation for a while, Little White said. Hanli nodded, flipped his wrist, took out another spirit beast pouch, and stored the white jade Pichio inside as well. After Jean Tong and Little White devoured the giant rat skeleton like a raging storm, the once crowded floor of the abyss suddenly seemed much more open. Hanli swept his gaze around the area, and suddenly his brow lifted slightly. At the base of the mountain wall, in the place that had previously been blocked by the skeleton, tiny green lights seemed to be flickering. He stepped over, crouched down, and examined the spot for a moment. His expression shifted. There were more than a dozen translucent plants growing there, each about 3 feet tall. Their leaves were thin and clear like ice crystal, with visible veins glowing green from within. After a brief pause, Hanli released his spiritual sense to inspect the strange plants, but detected nothing unusual about them. Though he could not identify them, he knew very well that anything capable of growing for so long at the bottom of an abyss so saturated with baleful aura could not be ordinary. Still, he had no mind to dwell on it now. With a flick of his wrist, he took out more than a dozen white jade boxes and carefully dug the plants out, roots and all, storing them one by one inside. Then he took out silver talismans and sealed each box. After finishing all this, Hanli stood there in silence for a while before suddenly speaking. "Mo Guang, come out." As soon as the words fell, the shadow before him turned pitch black and stretched longer, and Mo Guang's figure slowly rose from it. "Well, fellow Taoist Han, have you decided to accept my suggestion?" Mo Guang asked with a smile on the face that looked so much like Han Li's own. "I know the value of a gray immortal corpse well enough. A powerful enemy is approaching. If you can make the most of it, I have no reason to refuse. It may as well count as doing you a favor." Mo Guang's eyes flickered with joy. "Rest assured, fellow Taoist Han. Since you and I have signed the Heavenly Devil contract, our fates are tied together. If my strength increases, then your combat power increases as well. In the end, it benefits you. What you say is true enough. Still, our understanding of gray immortals is too limited. To prevent accidents, I'll need to place several restrictions inside your body first. I assume you won't object." Mo Guang froze slightly, then nodded as if nothing were wrong. "Of course." Hanli said nothing more. He pressed 2 fingers together and touched his brow, sending a thread of divine sense into Mo Guang's body. Then he formed hand seals and silently activated the spirit refinement art. Several crystalline threads immediately extended from the space between his brows, shooting toward Mo Guang's forehead, chest, dantian, and several other vital points. Mo Guang let out a muffled groan. His face twisted in pain, but he endured it in silence. A short while later, his expression relaxed and returned to normal. "That's done. These restrictions won't affect you in ordinary circumstances. But if, after entering the gray immortal body, you are accidentally controlled by some remnant soul or something similar, and you unknowingly do anything improper, then these restrictions will activate on their own. At that point, even I may not be able to stop them in time." Hanli withdrew his hand and looked at him meaningfully. "Don't worry. These restrictions will never need to be used," Mo Guang said with a smile. "The less they are needed, the better. Now then, tell me the method for refining an external body once more, in full detail. We can begin immediately." Mo Guang nodded and began moving his lips, explaining the specific steps. Hanli listened while silently comparing the explanation to the contents of the jade slip Mo Guang had given him earlier. Whenever he encountered something unclear, he asked a few questions. 3 days later, a triangular array inlaid with black marrow crystals stood at the bottom of the abyss. Hanli and Mo Guang stood on opposite sides of it, while the gray immortal corpse lay in the middle. The two exchanged a glance, sat down cross-legged at the same time, formed hand seals, and began chanting in low voices. As the black marrow crystals lit up, A cluster of black flames without any trace of heat rose from the array and enveloped the gray immortal corpse, beginning the refining process. Time passed and more than half a year slipped by. At the bottom of the abyss, baleful aura churned thickly. The triangular array was shrouded in heavy black mist, making everything inside hazy and indistinct. 3 zhang outside the array, Hanli sat cross-legged on the ground. Azure light flowed around him, while rings of pale golden ripples spread again and again from beneath him, releasing strange fluctuations. After a while, a thread of black baleful aura suddenly drifted over his face. It flickered several times before disappearing again. Hanli sighed softly and slowly opened his eyes. Silver-gray light shone within his pupils. During this period, his eyes had been changing unpredictably. Neither the timing nor the intervals followed any pattern. And the more often it happened, the more Hanli felt that deep inside his sea of consciousness, a hidden strand of baleful aura was growing stronger, bringing with it a rising sense of irritability. If his divine sense had not been powerful enough, it might already have begun to affect his mind. Hanli exhaled slowly. The black aura on his face gradually faded away, and his pupils also returned to normal. He flipped his hand, took out a pill, swallowed it, and once again closed his eyes to regulate his breathing. 2 months later, the once silent abyss floor suddenly erupted with booming sounds. The dense black baleful aura rolled violently like water splashed into boiling oil. The surging aura shot upward, nearly spilling out of the mouth of the abyss. High above, Donhua hovered in the air, staring down expressionlessly, though a hint of confusion flashed through his eyes. At the bottom of the valley, a massive vortex of baleful aura was twisting wildly, pouring toward the triangular array. Outside the array, Hanli and Emoguang stood with their hands behind their backs. One looked focused, the other slightly weary. Fellow Taoist Han, I truly must apologize. I originally thought the refining would be completed in 64 days. I never expected it to take this long, Emoguang said, his eyes fixed on the enormous vortex, which towered 100 zhang high and radiated overwhelming force. It doesn't matter. The timing is just right, actually. What matters is whether you are confident about the fusion, Hanli said, his gaze falling on the gray immortal corpse at the center of the array. Compared to when they had first found it, the corpse had filled out considerably, as though flesh had been restored to it. Even its once hideous face had softened somewhat, finally giving it a vaguely human appearance. I won't deceive you. Success and failure are 50-50. If I succeed in taking control of this body, my cultivation should rise to the golden immortal level, perhaps even the late stage. But if I fail, I'll be trapped inside the corpse and unable to escape, reduced to nourishment for it instead. Emoguang gave a bitter laugh. If you knew the risk was that high, why suggest this method in the first place? Hanli asked, frowning. What choice did I have? Your cultivation grows at an absurd rate, fellow Taoist Han, and every spirit pet and puppet at your side is formidable. Leaving that unfortunate fire whisker aside, Taoist Xie and that gold-devouring immortal are both far stronger than I am now. As your contracted servant, I've become little more than dead weight. If I didn't gamble everything now, who's to say you wouldn't eventually cast me aside? Don't you think so? That is an interesting way of putting it. Hanli neither denied nor confirmed it. Well then, success or failure will be decided now. Fellow Taoist Han, just wait for good news. Emoguang let out a low laugh. Then his body stretched like smoke and turned into a black shadow that plunged into the vortex. A thunderous boom rang out. At the center of the triangular array, the gray immortal corpse suddenly jerked upright like a corpse rising from the dead and stood ramrod straight. Its eyes were still lifeless gray, but its mouth opened impossibly wide. Hanli's eyes flashed as he saw the black shadow that was Emoguang plunge straight into the corpse's mouth, becoming billowing black smoke that poured into its abdomen. The instant Emoguang entered the body, the gray immortal corpse began trembling violently out of control. It raised both arms high, lifted one leg, and started flailing in an extremely awkward posture. All across its body, countless pores like immortal apertures opened at once and madly sucked in the black baleful aura of the abyss. That astonishing scene lasted an entire month. A month later, the baleful vortex at the bottom of the abyss vanished. The gray immortal corpse returned to stillness, but it remained suspended in midair in that same strange pose. Hanli stood not far away and swept his divine sense over it. He found no trace of magical power fluctuations on the corpse, nor could he detect much of Imoguang's aura. If not for the faint connection between them through the heavenly devil contract, Hanli might have believed that Imoguang had already been devoured by the corpse and turned into nourishment. Hanli shook his head and sighed. Then his brow suddenly lifted. He waved a hand, and a burst of golden light released Jin Tong. How is it? Has your realm stabilized? It's mostly stable after taking the 2 pills you gave me, uncle. But that's about all. A trace of regret appeared on Jin Tong's face. The Tai realm is a major threshold on the path of cultivation. Crossing it is no easy task. Just think of those people in the Nethercold Immortal Manor who fought to the death over a single Tai pill. You didn't even need one. Just by eating half a skeleton, you stepped securely into the early Tai realm. What more could you possibly want? Hanli laughed helplessly. 7 days earlier, Jin Tong had awakened and successfully broken through her bottleneck, reaching the early Tai stage. It seemed that the decline of heaven and man had not manifested at all in her, despite her being a gold-devouring beetle. Hanli had been both delighted and deeply amazed. If only I could go a little further and reach the middle Tai stage. Then if I join forces with you, uncle, we'd have a much better chance against that thing, Jin Tong said with a sigh. Hanli's brows rose slightly. After all the time they had spent fleeing and being hunted across the savage wastelands, Jin Tong seemed to have matured somewhat. But before he could feel too much relief, her very next sentence wiped that thought away. Hey uncle, this corpse looks pretty good too. Why not let me eat it as well? Maybe I could break through again and reach middle Tai. That is a gray immortal corpse, full of pure baleful aura. Do you really want to eat it? Hanli asked, caught between laughter and exasperation. Uncle, I haven't even finished digesting everything yet. But Little White has a good appetite, so maybe you could give it to him instead. At once Jin Tong shook her head so hard it looked like a rattling drum. At that moment, a strange sound suddenly came from the gray immortal corpse. A deep rasping sound like breathing. Hanli's expression changed. He immediately stepped forward and looked closely. Only then did he realize that the corpse's chest was rising and falling as if it were truly breathing. Its eyes, which had previously remained open, were now shut at some unknown point. Beneath the eyelids, the eyeballs moved restlessly, as if trapped in a nightmare and struggling desperately to awaken without success. This guy came back to life? Is he having a bad dream or something? Jin Tong stared wide-eyed in confusion. Hanli said nothing, but his expression shifted. Seeing that scene, he could not help but think of Mou's corpse in the Nethercold Immortal Manor. That body had also been in a living state, only unable to awaken because no soul inhabited it. Now this gray immortal corpse had returned from death to life, which meant the refining and Imoguang's fusion had succeeded. But why had he still not awakened? What had gone wrong? After pondering for a long while, Hanli's eyes suddenly brightened in realization. When that gray immortal corpse had awakened back then, it was not only because Mou's soul returned. It had also taken something special. Void Origin Pill. Before entering the Nethercold Immortal Manor, Jiao San had gone to great lengths to have him refine the Void Origin Pill. It had never been for nothing. One of the key reasons Mou had revived was that Jiao San had fed him that pill. At once, Hanli flipped his wrist, and a pill the size of a longan appeared in his palm. After a brief hesitation, he pinched the gray immortal's cheeks, forced its mouth open, and tossed the pill inside, guiding it down into the stomach. Once he had done that, Hanli made no further move. He simply stepped back 3 zhang and waited to see what would happen. Jin Tong was completely baffled by his actions, but seeing how solemn Hanli was, she also retreated and stared at the corpse with wide eyes. After roughly a dozen breaths, a loud belch rang out. The gray immortal corpse suddenly opened its mouth, blasting out a thick cloud of black smoke. Hanli's heart tightened. In one motion, he pulled Jin Tong behind him and silently activated the spirit refinement art. Fellow Taoist Han, don't attack. It's me. Imoguang's voice suddenly came from the gray immortal corpse. As he spoke, the corpse's limbs began moving, stretching left and right as though trying to get used to the body. How do you prove it? Hanli said coldly, without stopping the spirit refinement art. Emoguang hesitated for a moment, then formed a hand seal. The corpse's gray-white eyes turned pitch black. It opened its mouth and spat a mass of black qi into the air. The black qi condensed into a dark scroll of skin that slowly floated down in front of Hanli. Hanli swept it with his divine sense and instantly recognized it as the heavenly devil contract between them. Yet after a moment's thought, he still did not put away the spirit refinement art. Feeling the restrictions from the spirit refinement art buried inside his body, Emoguang opened his mouth and swallowed the black scroll back down. Helplessly he said, "Fellow Taoist Han, your caution really has not changed in the slightest, not even after 1,000,000 years. If I were not cautious, then the one standing here with a contract bound to you would still be Ma Liang, not me," Hanli replied calmly. "At first I didn't feel much. But now I increasingly realize that compared to you, Ma Liang truly was worlds apart. The difference is like heaven and earth. Rather than flattering me, explain why your cultivation is not what you claimed it would be," Hanli said, his gaze sharpening and his voice growing colder. At that moment, Emoguang's aura had clearly surpassed the golden immortal realm and reached the early Tai stage. It flickered up and down like a flame in the wind, as though it could not stabilize. Jin Tong saw this and her tiny brows immediately rose. Golden light flashed over her body again and again as she fully released her early Tai aura, glaring at Emoguang with open hostility. Emoguang promptly raised both hands in surrender. "Please don't misunderstand, fellow Taoist Han. Only during the fusion did I realize just how much stronger this gray immortal body was than I had imagined. I nearly got completely suppressed and devoured. If you hadn't fed me that pill in time, I would already have dissipated and been absorbed into the corpse. The moment you fuse, you reach early Tai. That does not look like someone who was nearly devoured," Hanli said. "You know very well that I was only a true immortal before. Taking over this body is already extremely difficult for me, and my current realm is unstable. Once it settles, at most I'll be at the late golden immortal stage. The Tai power can only be displayed briefly. It is not my true state." Through their spiritual connection, Hanli could indeed sense that Emoguang's aura was gradually falling back, little by little returning to the late golden immortal stage. Only then did he relax somewhat. "If that is truly the case, then I will believe that you are still the same Emoguang. Go ahead and regulate your breathing. I will guard you. Then I'll trouble you for that." Emoguang did not hesitate in the slightest. He sat down cross-legged at once and began to meditate. Hanli stood solemnly at the side, truly taking up the role of protector. Watching the exchange between the two, Jin Tong narrowed her eyes thoughtfully. Above a mountain peak in a green range, a massive cluster of translucent white light floated in the air. The light covered dozens of acres. White ripples flowed continuously across its surface, dazzling and bizarre like a giant kaleidoscope, so mesmerizing that anyone who looked at it might lose themselves in it. The white mass hovered there in plain sight, yet the nearby demon beasts did not dare approach it at all. The moment they sensed it, they fled. At the very center of the white light, the faint outline of a huge golden beetle could be seen. It was that Tai gold devouring immortal. Its entire body was motionless, as though frozen in place. Its eyes were half open and half closed, its expression dazed. Deep within its pupils, however, a tiny white vortex slowly revolved. If that white vortex were magnified 100 times, one would discover it was made up of countless white motes of light, and inside each mote was a flickering scene. In one of those scenes, a giant golden beetle, glittering all over, had already returned to the insect race and led an army of insects to wipe out all the nearby beast tribes, seizing vast territories and countless spiritual materials and treasures. Not long after, in another scene, yet another gold-devouring immortal appeared in the savage domain. After many twists and turns, the golden beetle killed and devoured it once more. Deep beneath the insect territory, inside an underground cavern, the golden beetle lay curled on an enormous golden stone bed, its face twisted in pain. A rich golden light surged from its body like raging flames. Along with the flashing light, an immense aura rose and fell violently, climbing higher and higher until it neared a bottleneck. But instead of slowing, the fluctuations became even fiercer, like furious tidal waves crashing again and again against an invisible barrier. Each impact made the cavern quake violently with a thunderous boom, sending dust and broken stone raining down. The explosions came faster and faster. The golden light around the beetle grew brighter and more blinding until it seemed like a golden sun, impossible to look at directly. The solid-looking golden radiance filled the entire cavern and flowed like liquid. Even the mountain walls, which had been reinforced by the beetle's own spells, began cracking under the repeated shocks, the fractures widening again and again. Then, all at once, a grand, piercing shriek rang out from within the blazing golden light. A vast aura surged outward from it, so enormous it seemed capable of holding up heaven and earth itself. With a single crash, the surrounding mountain walls collapsed as easily as paper, and the entire mountain was torn apart. Countless stones of every size crashed down from above, but the moment they struck the golden light, they were all flung away. At the center of that radiance floated an enormous golden cocoon. Natural golden patterns covered its surface, radiating a powerful law aura. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth rushed toward it like a tide, gathering into clusters of brilliant golden light that constantly fused into the cocoon, making it grow thicker and thicker. From inside came rolling thunder again and again, as though some terrifying being were being born within. Inside the cocoon, the golden beetle had already transformed into a tall, burly man with thick brows, a square face, sharp eyes, and strange golden markings across his cheeks. Thread after thread of substantial golden light flew off the cocoon and entered his body. His aura continued rising. Haha! At last I have returned to the great Luo realm. One day I will return. His face was filled with wild excitement as he threw back his head and roared. But at that very moment the sudden change came. The world around the tall man trembled violently, and cracks began appearing everywhere. Then with a crisp shattering sound, everything broke apart like glass, dissolving into countless sparkling fragments that drifted away. The smile on the tall man's face froze. He stood there completely stunned.